Grandma.
Where's Dad at?
Dad is at home, unavailable. He's got problems with his vehicle and he couldn't come and I couldn't go over there.
Okay, here the thing is, it has to be the parent named in the court
No,
paperwork.
it doesn't, sir. It says on there that somebody on the court. Let me get him.
Do you have a copy of his paperwork?
I don't, but
My advice, you need to get the copy too, okay?
look, I got pneumonia.
Mm-hmm.
I just came all the way from San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
He couldn't go pick him up because he had this stuff going on in San Antonio.
Mm-hmm.
And I just got out this morning. He said,
Okay,
I have to go.
I'll be back. Hang on.
Thank you.
What's your name?
Sandra Dixon.
What we're doing and banding together to try to change this comes from every single story that's in here and every single story that comes out every weekend. You have to pay close attention because parental alienation is everywhere. It's happened to our cousins. It's happened to our neighbors. Might have happened to us. We might be going through it. But you have to understand the patterns that exist, the high spectrum that there is. So listen closely.
My name is Petra Dito. I am an adult child of parental alienation, and I am the founder of Victim to Hero Institute. We do research and provide programs to support victims of parental alienation. Currently, I am also a researcher at the University of Tasmania, the Department of Health and Medicine, doing research into the triggers that wake up the adult children of parental alienation. And my hope is that with this research, we can start open the pathway to reunification, to help family reunite after parental alienation. So one of the problems that parents sometimes face is to do with custody interference, which means that one of the parent will try to prevent the other parent from having their children during their time of visitation or custody time. And when the rejected parent try to enforce their custody order, and sometimes they would call the law enforcement to try to help them with enforcing this, this legal document that they gain from the court. And sometimes they don't get the support that they need. And this comes from a lot of things. Part of it is to do with the lack of awareness, truly lack of awareness. A lot of police officers or sheriff department and people like that will tell you that this is a civil matter. They don't want to get involved. This is drama between family. And that leaves parents very truly devastated and helpless because they feel like, sometimes it takes them years going through court, fighting and spending so much money to try to get this piece of paper that's supposed to represent the law and telling them that this is the time that they can have their children. And yet somebody is in contempt of the court, violating this legal document, and yet the parents feel like they can't get any enforcement, and that's a very big problem. So like I said, one part of it is to do with the lack of awareness from the police force, because they don't know that, for example, in Texas specifically, it's actually a felony. It's a jail time felony. It's, Texas Code 2503. It's to do with custody interference. So what they don't realize is that this is not a civil matter. This is actually a felony. It's a criminal matter. So the police, it's actually their job to enforce this legal issue, but a lot of the time they don't. So like I said, one part of it is to do with the lack of awareness. The other part of it is to do with, actually this is somewhat a top-down issue, as in they actually have been instructed to not get involved. And that's interesting because the district attorney office, it's their job to enforce criminal matters. When somebody have committed a crime, it's their job to do something about it. And because the DA office is loaded with what they consider serious matters, right, which is like homicides and robberies and things like that, for some reason they chose to sort of rank this matter as a lower priority. They see that, well, this is not murder, this is not, they don't realize the seriousness, the consequences that comes with this. Truly, when you think about it, really, in our society, I truly believe that the majority of the problems that we are facing in societies actually come from trauma childhood that have been devastated and damaged due to lack of loving parents. And a lot of it is not because the parents are not loving. A lot of it is to do with parents that are loving but are prevented from being able to be there for their children, especially when you're talking about parental alienation and custody interference. So because of this, but it's kind of an invisible problem, isn't it? Because society don't recognize this. It's not like somebody is getting shot right now. We don't see blood and we don't see bruises right now. So there's lack of that sense of urgencies and lack of the awareness of how serious this is. And that's why the DA office and the law enforcement tend to sort of rank this as a lower priority issue. And so when we look at, for example, I actually don't remember specific right now, but a lot of instruction manual at different departments like police department and sheriff's department, I look at a lot of them, and actually specifically they even wrote in there that they're not going to enforce these custody matters, which create a huge problem, because then obviously, like I said, parents are helpless, children are being left with the alienator. And guess what? Alienators are abusive. They are there to do anything to damage their ex-partner using the child as a weapon. So what you're essentially doing is you removing a loving parent and leaves the child with an abuser. Well, that's a very serious problem. So if we can get 2503, Texas code to do with custody interference, if we can get that enforced, that can solve a lot of these problems. So like I said, there's a lack of awareness, there's a lack of priority, and there's many other problems as well. Like, for example, let's just face it, there's corruption. I don't want to go into a lot of details here, but whether we like it or not, it exists. And so, like I said, it's a very big problem. Parental alienation can happen in different ways. For each family, different situation, it can be very different, and there are different type of I guess severity of parental alienation, but usually parental alienation happen from a mild level, and then it sort of progressively get worse. It doesn't just happen like immediately, like seriously, it does, but not very often. So there are early signs of parental alienation when it's mild, and a lot of the time, the rejected parent or the alienated parent don't recognize these early signs, and so because they don't recognize it and they don't interfere quickly enough, then things get worse, and then things just eventually get really bad. We do get situations where it get bad immediately, especially when it comes to like child abduction, for example, where one parent maybe take the child and then move to a different country or things like that. So we do have those situations, but most of the time it started a little bit sort of mild. And so let's talk about those early signs of symptoms that parents sometimes don't recognize. So for example, you may, and this is the thing, right? Because parents are going through separation or divorce. So they are going through their personal trauma. They try to cope with a breakup. So, and then in that fight of, the breakup, sometimes it doesn't matter how it goes, it's going to be hurtful. So because of that, parents tend to already to occupy emotionally to notice this stuff. But some of the early signs is that you start to hear stories, you start to hear sort of comments statements or rumor, especially through the child, about you, things that are not true. So, or through friends or family, things that saying, for example, you weren't a very good parent in some way, like, you're not available when you look back, you were, like, you never, for example, you never there for the child's volleyball games, or, well, you don't give the child food, things like that. So you can hear this thing and you go, a lot of the time parents go, oh, just my ex is just, I'm just going to focus on being a good parent and I'm just not going to worry about that. A lot of the time parents will do that. But it started, you start to hear these stories, and then you start to see the children start to behave a little bit differently. You notice the children tend to get a little bit cold, a little bit distant, a little bit uncomfortable around you. When you go to school events and functions that your ex is there, you start to see the children sort of like act a little bit awkward, a little bit cold and distant to you. These are the early signs of parental alienation. You start to see things, and then it just get worse and worse, because then the alienators get away with it. They can see that, the flying monkeys, the friends and family start to buy into these stories. And then they see that the children start buying into these stories. So, and it takes a little bit of time for the children to buy in, to get brainwashed. So, you might start seeing the children behaving this way, and if you don't do something about it, and actually worse is when parents don't realize this is an impact of parental alienation. So all they see is that the children coming over to their house and cold and rude, or staying in their room, playing games all the time, video games all the time, not talking to them, not going out to have lunch or dinner. The kids don't answer them properly, sort of acting rude, things like that. And then instead of recognize that this is the result of parental alienation, or brainwashing, they react to the child. So, and it's understandable, but unfortunately, it's the worst way of responding to parental alienation. So parents would go, oh, you want to be rude to me, how dare you? And, you raise your voice, or sometimes you punish the child, and sometimes you turn cold and distant to the child as a response, right? And it's understandable, because you didn't want to be treated this way. So then as a result, you thought that this is an appropriate way to discipline the child, right? But what you don't realize is that when the child is being brainwashed, that's not how you should respond to these problems. And that's create a lot of problem, because when you act that way, you give the child the ammunition, because the child is conflicted. The child being told that you are bad, and the child loves you, but they are conflicted. One parent saying that you're bad, and then when the child goes to you, and then you scream at the child, now it reinforces the child, because the child's now feeling guilty about, well, I don't know if my parents, my dad or my mom is bad, and now you screaming at the child go, oh, yeah, he or she's bad. Now I can justify my action of rejecting that parent. And it confirmed what the alienator is trying to feed the child, a story of, that you are rude, that you're cold, that you're aggressive, that you are emotionally unstable, that kind of things, right? So it just doesn't help at all when you. And that's a problem, because a lot of parents don't even know what they're looking at, and you just act on impulse, and it's understandable, but it makes the problem a lot worse.
Who has a parental custodian? You do?
I'm Paul.
Hey, who are you?
That's him.
All right.
I'm his girlfriend. Go ahead.
Girlfriend? Okay.
We have kids together.
Then, yeah. She can have all this freedom all she wants, but technically you're the one that needs
That's
to do
okay.
that stuff. And in reality, it's a civil matter, man. You need to
but
you need to go to the court. You need to call the attorney general, go to the court, and start going through all that process.
My name is Taryn Champagne, and I am the father of an 8-year-old boy named Finley Champagne. He is my only son. The first time I felt something wrong was when the first time I went to court. My son's mother had left, and I had been the primary caregiver for Finley when she had gone off and moved about 100 miles away. She moved back, and we went to court, and the judge immediately turned him over to her. It didn't make any sense to me, because he had been in my care almost exclusively since the time she had left several months prior to us going to court. And almost immediately I noticed that my son had changed. He was a very happy child. He was progressing and developing as a child should at that age. And immediately when he was turned over to his mother's care, it was like he took several steps backwards in his development. And it became difficult to kind of get him to move forward with developing how to take care of himself and everything, because it was like he would be with me for a weekend, and then, you know, for 3, 4, 5 days, he wouldn't see me. And at that point, you know, any progress we'd been making went backwards. And the only thing I could keep doing in this situation was keep pushing forward and trying to get my son to develop and take care of himself normally as any child would. It just meant that everything was slowed down significantly. Parental alienation, I really started finding out after I started getting involved in the equal parenting movement. I started learning about kind of signs that you're looking for, changes, you know, parental gatekeeping, basically, where one parent is trying to keep the other parent out of the child's life. Very specifically in my case, and this has only escalated in the past several months, I'm no longer allowed to be a part of my son's educational activities. The school he attends is where my son's mother works, and they have conspired with her to make certain that I am not involved in the school at all. I can't even go pick him up from the school, and that is detrimental to my son's development. Children need both parents involved in their life. And in fact, it's been shown that a lack of a father's involvement in the child's life will have negative effects on them. They have, you know, higher instances of drug abuse, gang activity, teenage sexual relations, and all of that. And it's something that could be prevented, but when you're dealing with alienators, there's not much you can do. And the problem is they are enabled by the court system. The standard possession order, by its very nature, alienates the child from their parent. That parent is unable to participate in their day-to-day activities and becomes a visitor in their life. Research has shown once you are below a certain threshold, a certain percentage, the child is considered in either a fatherless or a motherless home. In Texas, because the overwhelming majority of non-custodial parents are the father, we can just say that they are in a fatherless home. The expanded standard possession order, while better, is still not an ideal situation. It's a step in the right direction, but it is not where the children need to have that free and open access to their children. Both parents should be able to be involved, and really it shouldn't be artificially restricted by a court. By artificially restricting a parent's access to the child, it allows one parent to deem themselves to be the superior or better parent, which is not necessarily supported by any conclusions of law or any sort of scientific basis. It's based off of the perceptions and opinions of a judge, which oftentimes hold no value, and the judges are overall untrained. As far as how long have I been kept from my son, I think the longest I've gone with him involuntarily is about the 2 weeks usually when there's a long break, whether it be spring break or a Christmas break, where you go without seeing your child. And I would very much say this is, while my son's mother is the one doing the keeping, she is enabled by the court. The court is the real problem with all of this. If everybody went into court and knew that barring any sort of, horrific circumstances, the best you were going to get was equal access to your child. It would take the fight out of most parents, because all you're going to get is 50-50. Unfortunately, the setup of the Texas family court systems is that it is a winner-take-all battle. And overall, for the most part, you are screwed as a man going into those courts. Or if your partner, if your partner has an exorbitant amount of money and can just spend you into submission. My worst experience with court, the past 6 months since July of 2021, I've been fighting in the court system where they are conducting them in secret. So the COVID-19 pandemic has allowed unfettered public access to the court system where we can see the abuses of the court. Because I have stood up against the courts, they have attempted to silence me and make it so that others cannot see what is going on. I even have a court order signed by Judge Catherine Mousy out of Austin, Texas, where it says that none of my future hearings will be streamed on YouTube. It is because those courts are afraid of their racket getting out in the public eye. And I think it's very important that we continue to expose the courts, and these judges act a lot better when they are being watched, as opposed to acting like the little gods of their own fiefdoms that they have right now. My son, Finley, has told me that he wants to spend more time with me and has asked why he can't see me more often. And the only reason that I can give to him is because his mother does not want him to see me more. What she fails to realize, or she has, or she ignorantly digs her head into the sand like an ostrich, is that at any time, both parents can come to an agreement, whatever agreement or schedule that they want to. My son's mother likes to hide behind the court, giving her, the greater share of custody based on the expanded standard possession order. And she seems to think because the court ordered it, then that's what's in the best interest. Where, as I mentioned before, and others will note, the judges are woefully undertrained, and they do not understand that basically what they have done for the past 40, 50 years has gut our society and do damage to it. If they were medical practitioners, they would be sued, but because they have judicial immunity, there's very little that can be done other than exposing them in the public eye and seeing if you can get it so that they are not elected. My treatment by the general public has been a mixed bag. So the people who see me and know me, and general members of the public who see me with my son, realize that I am an excellent father. And at his previous school where he was involved, I was very highly involved. I volunteered and had lunch with my son often, and I was very welcomed at his school. When he was switched to the school he's at currently, because his mother worked there, she has used the school as a weapon to attempt to alienate me from my son by preventing me from being involved in any school activities. The first day of my son's school that I went to at his new school that his mother had deliberately enrolled him in, there was a issue with the pickup. The school had decided to engage in alienating behaviors, telling me that I was not welcome and that they were severing the school-parent relation with me because I had dared to ask about their qualifications as teachers, and they got very upset about it. So they told me I was not welcome at the school. My son's mother told me that I would be picking him up at a different location of her choosing at her time, as the custody order specifically stated that I could pick my son up when school was dismissed at the school, and we did not confirm an alternate pickup location, which I was not opposed to. I just wanted to pick him up when school was dismissed. I went to the school because that was the only known location and confirmed location of where I could pick him up. The school did not want me on their property. I did not step on their property since they had shown they wished to be hostile towards me. So they called the police, and I called the police right back on them for interference with child custody in Texas Penal Code 2503. So fortunately, when the police arrived, they sized up the situation and I was able to get my son back. They called my son's mother and told her that she had to turn my son over to me at the school. And they educated the school that, you know, they may not like me, but they cannot stop me from picking my son up at the school. This is a rarity, and I have only heard a handful of stories. I could probably count on my hand the number of times police have actually helped when one parent is interfering with child custody. I would say I'm a very rare exception, and it's very unfortunate that the police do not enforce interference with child custody, because every time they fail to enforce that law, then that makes the alienating parent basically confirmed in what they're doing and enables them. As I've mentioned before, I believe that the judges are the major contributing factor to what is going on with parental alienation. Once again, they are woefully undereducated on child development. They believe because they practice family law, they are more than qualified to tell you to follow the Texas Family Code, which would not stand up to any sort of scientific scrutiny. And the judges themselves, when you argue with the judges, whether it be regarding your rights or, you know, regarding what's in the best interest of the child, they get very upset at you because how dare you, peasant, try and argue with me. As some people have deemed them, they are tyrant judge gods. And when you fight against them, they will attempt to crush you. So you have to go in there. If you are willing to fight, you need to go in knowing that the judge could do basically whatever they want. Because if you want to challenge them, you'll have to go on appeal. And even judges I've heard, when you tell them what they're doing is wrong, they say, you will have to take that up on appeal. As far as how the judges come to their conclusions, they have it based on their own preconceived notions. Once again, in Texas, 91% of the non-custodial parents are fathers. There is absolutely no way that this happens without bias. A law may be written as unbiased, which the Texas Family Code says that they will not consider the sex, gender, race of the parent, but it is very obvious by the rulings in Texas that they are incredibly biased against men. Because the police overall do not enforce Texas Penal Code 2503, interference with child custody, the alienating parent is enabled in their behavior because of the police's failure to act. People respond to incentives, and so if they can get away with not turning the child over, then they're not going to do it in the future. It needs to be done quickly and immediately. The police will tell you that it is a civil matter, but it very clearly is not. It is a state jail felony. Does anybody want, mom or dad going to jail? No, but if you are going to be using your child as a weapon, you have already shown that you are not a very good parent, that you are not encouraging that relationship with that parent. If you just don't like them or you don't get along with them, you're in the wrong if you're holding that child away from their parent. They may have separated or divorced from you. They did not do the same with their child. And if they love their child and you do that, you are a despicable human being. For anybody going through either parental alienation, the family courts, or anything like that, what you need to think about is what is going to happen if you do not stand up and say no to what's going on right now. This issue has been continuing for the past 40, 50 years, and because people have not stood up, it has been enabled. There is a very good chance that you will lose access to your children. And I feel terrible for any parent who's had to go through that. However, If you do not do anything about that in your time, that means your children will have to go through this. And it is up to us to stop this so that it does not happen to our children or our grandchildren.
There's no criminal charges filed.
But it's a criminal offense.
Correct.
Correct. 2503, interference with child custody, which is her not showing up, is a criminal offense.
Hi, my name is Jody Mueller, and I would like to let everyone know about what has happened with me and my 4 children regarding the family fraud courts and how this has affected myself and my children and our bond and my trust in the court system. When I first noticed that something was happening was actually when my children were very young and I was still married. So sometimes this happens in an intact marriage. I didn't realize this or what was taking place until many years later. But my first inclination something was wrong was when I was reading a bedtime story to my older 2 children. My twins were not born at that time. And I changed a word in a simple fairy tale, just a simple word. Instead of porridge with Goldilocks and 3 bears, I changed it to hamburgers because I was tired of the same story. My oldest daughter had a sense of humor, and we just thought it would be funny. And my door got kicked in by my ex-spouse. And he scared my children, who were 3 and 1, and said they're never going to learn this fairy tale if you're saying it this way. He left the room immediately after that, and my 3-year-old said, "Mommy, why are you reading this to me wrong?" And it didn't dawn on me this was a form of alienation and maybe even gaslighting. So many things happen similar to that. But it made me question everything I did. What I did personally, what I did as a mother. So that was the start of it. And then it just progressively got worse. We separated after my twins were 5 weeks old. They'd only been home from the hospital 2 weeks at that time because they were preemies. And he abducted my older 2 children. I was at a baby shower with my twins, surrounded by friends and family. He came in and served me divorce papers. I didn't know my older 2 were out in the car. That was found out after everything kind of calmed down, and I discovered my kids are gone. So that was my first taste of the police being involved. They came to the event, the baby shower, in front of everyone, 30 some people, friends and family, and told me the worst phrase I've ever heard in my life. "It's a civil matter, ma'am." So I didn't get my children back for 26 days at that time, my older 2 children. It was the longest 26 days of my life. Going back, now I'm thinking that's not much time at all from what I'm experiencing now. But I had my attorney, the judge granted me primary custody of all 4 at that time because of how he did what he did. And I was thankful, but in the courts, they were trying to say, "Do you want him to have every other weekend?" I said, "That's impossible because of his job. He can't be restricted to every other weekend. He doesn't have those times off. He can see our children whenever he shows up, even after what he did to me. I wanted him to be a part of their life. I knew that was important, that they had both parents. But he didn't show up. So for the first 3 years of their life, he showed up 2 times. I have this documented, 2 times in 3 years. So of course their bond is severed at this time. Our twins didn't even really know him. They were babies. Whenever he would come to town, he was a pilot. Whenever he'd come to town, I would buy the food for him to take it to the hotels. And later in the courts, he said that never happened. So he had me almost believing I didn't take it, but I had witnesses that I took this food. He asked me, why do you keep bringing this food? I said, because if you're paying child support, you're also funding the food. So why wouldn't I bring the food? It's with the child support, right? So I took the food to him many times, many times. I even knew the people that owned the hotel. And I even took my own microwave because I didn't have a microwave. So I wanted to make sure my children were comfortable. He didn't have to go to the store with them. He could spend his entire time just having fun with our children and didn't have to go shopping. It was already there, provided for him. Let's see, when I first found out about what parental alienation was, it was happening to me, but I didn't know. My kids would come back after seeing him and saying just strange things. Why do you do this? Why do you do this? Well, we've always done this, and then it was, I'd have them in different sporting things. My son, who loved to bowl, and my daughter suddenly stopped wanting to go bowling because her dad had taken them and said, you can't make money at bowling. Why is your mother so stupid that she's having you be in bowling? Well, I had a son that's very shy that couldn't handle other sports. I tried bowling. He took to it. Got my older daughter involved. She took to it. My twins at that time loved it. I take them to bowling one day, and my daughter's laying on the table, wouldn't get up, said her stomach hurts. My son gets out on the lane and lays down on the lane with his shoes on, regular street shoes. He's not supposed to do that. What is wrong with you? Because I don't know, I don't feel good. Well, what I found out later was their dad had, kept instilling that this was a bad thing that I put them in. So they were trying to get out of it to please the dad. So suddenly that was over. We had no more time. We couldn't enjoy our Saturdays together at the bowling alley. He took that from them. So I'm still going, what is happening? What is happening? This is crazy behavior. Still not knowing. Well, when he abducted my older two children, about the sixth, I shouldn't say abducted, coerced them to stay with him longer. If he did come to visit, he would sometimes only ask for 2, not 4. If he said, I'll have them for 3 days, it ended up being tug of war, and I wouldn't get them back maybe for 2 weeks. But I knew better. You don't turn him in, or you'll lose your kids forever. So I didn't call the cops. I did do a couple welfare checks just to make sure they're okay. But I didn't call the courts. I didn't do any of this nonsense. Well, when we were ordered to go to children in the middle class, I first heard the word parental alienation. And I wrote it down. This was in 2013, I believe. No, 2012 when I first heard it. Wrote it down. I brought it up to the judge in the courtroom after he had abducted my children. And she says, yes. Do you know what that is? I said, yes. I read the definition. It's the systematic brainwashing of children to reject the other parent. They reject me. It could be even simple as dinner. I'm not going to eat with you. Dad says I don't have to eat with you. Well, Dad doesn't live here, and we're a family, and we need to eat together like we always have. Nope, won't do it. Hey, let's go to the store. No, won't do it. Rejected everything. But they started calling the dad saying, Mom won't take us anywhere. So it's just totally mind-blowing what was taking place. One time, I put my oldest daughter on an airplane. My ex is a pilot. My kids fly for free. She was going out to Tennessee to pick up my twins, who we'd been out there for vacation. And they wanted to stay an extra week. I said, okay, no problem. We're going to meet back in Chicago. We were in Des Moines, Iowa. So I asked my daughter, my oldest, would you be willing to go out there? You'll be flying alone, but I'll make sure Dad's in Chicago to get you to the next plane. She said, yeah, Mom, I've flown a lot. I'm good. Okay. She got to Chicago. I'm at home with my son. My twins are in Tennessee. And I get a frantic call from my twins. She's not on the plane. She's not on the plane. Now, I'd already talked to my ex who said, yep, I just landed in Chicago. I'm going to meet her at her gate. He was going to meet her at arrival. Okay, she's 14 at the time I was. 2 hours later, when they're supposed to be in Knoxville, Tennessee, she doesn't arrive. So now I have to take on this daunting task of contacting the police at the airport, contacting the airline. I used to work for American Airlines, so I know that you can call dispatch, and they've got a system where they can contact the pilot in the air. I was so desperate, I thought my child fell asleep. I didn't know if she was grabbed by somebody. I didn't know, maybe she was in the bathroom locked in there. We tried everything. This was like a 2-hour process trying to find my daughter. Well, I would say about 2 hours after that, the phone calls, the constant crying, where's my kid? I don't know, is she in Mexico? Is she wandering around Chicago airport? Is she dead? What happened to her? He's a pilot. He can get on any plane he wants. There's no way of knowing where she could be. My twins called me after they'd already been crying. They're at the Knoxville airport waiting for her and said, Mom, she's on Twitter. And I wasn't on these things. And she sent a strange message. And she's standing in front of the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco. And they said she's not saying much. So I had to contact her. Why the hell? You know, I'm texting her, why are you out there? You know, it was the next day before I saw her again in Chicago. He brings her back. And she said, Mom, he told me he's the boss. You're not the boss. He's the boss. And asked me if I'd ever seen the Golden Gate Bridge and would I like to go. And I said, I would have let you go. All I need to know is, where are you? Because since he didn't show up, you know, hardly ever showed up to these children, I would have allowed it. Even if it messed up my plans, I would have allowed it. And we would have got by. But I don't know if I'm grieving a child that's kidnapped by someone else at this time, or what am I supposed to do? Cops aren't helping. They're saying it's a civil matter. What? No, isn't it an abduction? Is there an Amber Alert? What do we need to do here? I don't know where my kid is. I don't know what airline she's on. Nothing. She finally arrives in Chicago and we're alone, me and her in the bedroom. And I said, tell me what took place here, because what if a plane crashed, your plane crashed? I don't even know that I'm supposed to be grieving my child at this time. And I said, you know that I would have let you go. She goes, I know you would have let me go. I know you would have let me go. Dad told me not to call you because he's the boss. And I was scared. And I knew my only way to get to you was a message on Twitter so that Courtney and Kylie would tell you. So you wouldn't be scared and you knew I was alive. So this was like one of the most terrific things he's done. I mean, up to that point. The next time was just a few days later. He showed back up in Chicago. I was out there for a week for like a convention. He said, can I take our son? Okay, once again, how do I say no to my son who's like, yes, can I go? Can I go? My son was like, I think 12 at the time, I'm trying to recall, maybe 13. And I said, okay, buddy, are you okay? Well, my son at this time had been diagnosed with Asperger's on the spectrum and didn't like social interaction with people, was afraid, was very shy. Well, we agreed at that time, okay, you're going to go from point A to point B, right? My ex said, yes, he's going to be with me the whole time. Even on my trip, he'll be sitting right behind me. You know, he won't be in the cockpit, obviously, but he's going to be sitting there. Okay, we're all good to go. He was only supposed to go from Chicago to Oklahoma and back. He ends up in LA. He leaves my son in the LA airport. My shy son, with the phone, with hardly any charge on it, and he calls me crying and says, I don't know what to do. I got bumped off the flight because he's non-rev. He only can fly when regular passengers aren't on there, you know, if there's enough room. So I left my little son. If it was my oldest daughter, it wouldn't have been so scary. But my son was in a fetal position. He said, I'm sitting on the ground, crying. What do I do? He had went to Seattle, and left my son. Again, I don't know, do I call the cops? What do I do? If you call the cops, then I'll get for child neglect and I'll lose my son forever. So I told my son, stay on the phone. I want you to walk to like a Chili's or a restaurant. Do you see anything right by you? And I stayed on the phone with him until he got there. I said, get the phone to the waitress. I said, my son needs to sit at the bar, closest, not by all the people, but closest to the bar with a plug-in. She got him all set up. I said, I promise his dad's going to be back. Please don't call anyone. He's going to call me every 10 minutes. So we did this for hours until his dad finally got back. Still, I have no answers from this man why he would do this to my son. I've had constant things happen like this. He's just very abusive to me, and I think that's abusive to my children. Not knowing, can someone grab them at any moment? They're not safe. They're not with their mom or dad. So in 2013, we're fast forwarding. Now they're full-blown alienated. At this time, they're age 17 and 15. And then my twins are 13. It's Halloween time. We always go on like a hayride somewhere or go to the cornfield. We were living in Iowa at the time. My older two were born in Texas, but they said, no, we're not going. I said, we're going. This is a tradition. We're going. Let's all go. I said, but grab your jackets. We don't need a jacket. Dad said, we don't have to do what you say. Well, Dad's not here. And you need a jacket because it gets chilly because we're going to be out there, and it's windy where we're going. Nope, we don't need it. We're good. We get in line, and my older two start rubbing up against each other like their arms. It was the strangest thing I've ever seen, this alienation. I hear from other moms and dads that this happens. They're huddled up together like hostages. I can't even explain this. My twins didn't act like that. They're like hostages. They would listen to the same music with the same earbuds, one in one ear, one in the next to them. And they're calling their dad. Mom wouldn't let us wear a jacket. What's happening here? We argued for 10 minutes about the jacket. He says, give the phone to your mom. What kind of mother are you taking my children out there when it's 42 degrees with no jacket? I said, I've told them to get the jacket. The twins have jackets. I wouldn't say you wear a jacket and you don't. I had this argument. They're 15 and 17. I don't know what to tell you. He goes, well, you need to have those kids to me by 6 o'clock. I said, yeah, I'm well aware of what the court order says. And I said, you know what? Since they're so cold, why don't you meet me earlier? Because we're leaving. I met him at 5:30 at a barbecue restaurant in Des Moines, Iowa. And I haven't seen my daughter since, except for one time, 5 minutes in a courthouse hallway. And that was October 30th, 2013. My son I've seen 5 times, 5 short times. And every time's pretty horrific. One time I pulled up with my 2 sisters behind me in a car and my twins with me. And they said, let's just try one more time to see if we can see Ian. My sisters knocked on the door. My son came to the door, and the dad was far enough away, and they said, your mom's outside. And I'm half a block away because you can't park in front of his house because he calls the cops and says I'm harassing him. My son, who never goes outside without shoes or socks, is so sensitive with things that touch his feet. I used to get used to say, both of us cannot walk outside barefoot. So I found this very telling. He's running. This kid doesn't run. He was running full force and jumped in my arms. At this time, he's 17. I hadn't seen him for 2 years. He said, Mom, you gotta get out here. You gotta get out of here. He's calling the cops. I just wanted to be able to hug you. And I said, maybe you can go to eat with us. And the twins were hugging him. They hadn't seen him. Their dad comes running full force out of the house and sees that I have witnesses there, my 2 sisters, and he hides behind the garage. You can just see his shoulder, and he's listening to every word my son's saying. You know, it's probably pretty difficult. We're a house away. But I whispered to him, I said, I'm not going to ask you anything. I'm not going to ask you anything about what's going on. I just want to hold your hand. I'll even cut your steak. I know you like steak. Let's go for your favorite meal. I'll cut your steak so that I can just hold on to you. And I won't ask anything. He said, I got to go ask him. I said, no. Just go barefoot. If you ask him, I'll never see you again. So my sister said, can she go? Can she just take him to eat? He goes, he's an adult. He can do what he wants. And she goes, we're going with him. They knew. And he held my sister's hand. He knew that if he went in there, he wouldn't be able to come out. So they both went to the porch and made sure. They walked back. Mind you, I have 2 cars at this time. My sister said, the minute he gets in, you need to haul ass back to Texas. And I think he wanted me to do that. But I said, I can't do that to him. Because he doesn't like change, this kid of mine. And so, even though I wanted to do it so bad, I knew for him I couldn't do it. But I said, I just want time with my son, take my twins, drive behind me. But just make sure you're behind me in case he calls the cops. We drove for about 2 blocks, and I stopped the car. And my son put his hand in my hand like this. Because that's how we always rode together. And I said, I'm only going to ask one question, and then we're not going to talk about it. Why? Why did you not go to my father's funeral that was 12 blocks away a year ago? Why did you not show up? I waited for you at the door. He said, Mom, I was never told. My oldest daughter was told. He goes, they never told me that Grandpa died. And he goes, will you forgive me for not being there? And will Grandpa forgive me? I said, yeah, he knows what was happening. Well, we went to eat. We had a fantastic time. I cut a steak like I promised. And I had pictures of him just smiling and smiling. He said, I don't know when I'm going to see you again. I said, I'm just going to keep fighting. I'm just going to keep fighting. And the next time it was graduation, a year later. And he came out, and he's looking all around. Well, my oldest daughter, when she came out 2 years prior, she didn't want to talk to me. She treated me like crap. So this time I had another witness go with me, my sister, and she says, don't treat your mom that way. She can't handle much more pain. He said, I won't, but you got to find her before my dad gets out here. So he goes, hurry, Mom, hurry. And I hugged him, and he goes, you know I don't have much time. I said, I know. And he had handed it the rose. They each had a rose. Hand it to the most influential person in your life. I'm sitting in the back of this gymnasium just crying, going, that poor kid. He's the only one sitting there not moving. He would not get out of his seat. He was in the back row. They had to drag my son up out of his seat at graduation because they knew he was so conflicted. He knew he couldn't give me that rose. And I was like, in my head, just God, let him stand up. He doesn't have to give it to me. Just let him feel like he can stand up and do whatever he's compelled to do. And he started walking down, and he looked at me. And his dad was, of course, in the front row or third row. And he went, well, like this, like, give it to my girlfriend. And my son just looked devastated. And he had to hand it to her. And I went out crying. trying to get myself back together. And then when I came in, that's when he said, hurry, hurry. And he goes, oh God, there he is, there he is. But, you know, to make my son feel better, I could tell was struggling with this. I have a picture of it. I got my hand on his heart. And I said, thank you, Ian, for not giving me that rose. Because it tells me, and this is true, I'm allergic. I'm allergic to roses for real. I said, that tells me, and I had my hand behind his back and my hand on his heart. I said, that tells me that you remember your mama's definitely allergic to roses. Because I know who's most influential in your life. That's me. And he says, that's right. It's fruitless. I mean, it's like talking to a brick wall. I feel like I'm in an alternate universe. Sometimes I feel like I'm watching this person that just is in a horror film. What the hell? Okay, my experience with trying to get help with these situations that I went through, I was always met with, it's kind of like talking to a brick wall wherever I went, whether it was the police, the judges. Like I said before, the police just say it's a civil matter over and over and over again. And I remember distinctly one judge, after he had taken my older two in 2013, what she asked me was strange. She said, well, how long since he's seen the twins? Thought that was a strange question. My older two had just been abducted. And I said, well, I believe it's been 5-6 weeks. And she goes, and why is that? I go, I have no idea. He only picks up the older two. Or if he picks up the 4, he sends the other 2 back. He comes up with an excuse. So what she said to me was, well, this is what you're going to do. Now, mind you, my older 2 had been abducted at this time. This was October 2013. And I'm begging for mercy here. I just want to see my children. Last I saw him was on a hay ride, you know? And she said, well, what you're going to do is you're going to take these twins tonight and you're going to deliver them to his door. Wait, let me get this straight. He abducted my older children, but now I have to give up my other 2 children? My other 2 children are scared to death, thinking they're never going to come back. They wouldn't even sleep in their room. Well, I said, look, Judge so-and-so, I haven't seen my children in 28 days. She goes, then 29 won't matter. What do you mean 29 won't matter? She goes, because you're going to take the twins tonight to him, and they get to spend the night. And I said, well, why won't I get the other 2 back? She goes, they have to have time to adjust to coming back to you. That's what she told me. My abducted children that have been gone for 28 days that lived with me primarily, because he was absent most of their life, had to adjust to coming back to me. And I was supposed to give up 2 more children and be without any. And more trauma, wondering, will they ever come back? She says, if you don't do this, I'll hold you in contempt. The boyfriend I had at the time took them, and he said they were kicking and screaming. He goes, I'm carrying them to the door. My ex comes to the door and says, didn't think you were coming, so I didn't buy you any beds. They all came back the next day and treated me horrible. And then here we go again. He did it again with my older 2 shortly after that. But after he took them the next time, I didn't get them back at all. And it took 5 months to even get a court hearing. He would come up, my ex would come up with conflicts. So they would cancel court. Well, I would be there at any time. Nope, canceled. Spent thousands of dollars on lawyers. After 5 months of not seeing my older 2 children, we finally go to court. We were ready to go to court. And my father's memorial was the night before, so I was up all night crying. My kids weren't allowed to be there. So here we are in court, and He says, we're not going to give you the children because he said that they're scared of you. He said they're scared of you. So he took the children from me. We kept joint legal. He got primary custody, and I turned to the judge. I said, I'll never see him again. So we made that decision in the car that we were going to move. Got down here, and it was just a few months. We got down here in July of 2014. In March the next year, he convinced them somehow through my oldest daughter to get on a plane in the middle of the night, my twins. So here we go. I had to once again go through it again. And I came home from work and my twins were now missing. And the cop came to the door and said, well, they weren't abducted. I thought he meant they were killed because I'd made him leave that car, was what I thought. I told him not to be in that car and go home. So I thought they found him dead. And he wouldn't issue an Amber Alert. I was refused an Amber Alert, even though we didn't know where the hell they were. We didn't know what was going on until I got to the door and I found a runaway letter. In the runaway letter, it said, we know you're going to be upset, but we know it's in our best interest. You know those words they use in the court. It's in our best interest to live with Dad, Kaylin, and Ian. We hope to one day reunify. Words that most children that just turned 15 don't use. My children didn't. So the very next day, I had CPS come to the door. I hadn't slept. I said, what are you doing here? So he treats me badly. Well, your kids came to the counselor, said they're thinking about running away. Running away? They told the counselor that, and no one called me? The primary custodial parent, no one called me. Because my kids are gone. And he goes, what? Yeah, my kids are gone. Oh my God. We didn't think they were serious. Why did they say they want to run away? They said they didn't like Texas. Oh, okay. Well, I send them to Iowa every 3 weeks. They fly for free. They're going up there to their friends. I didn't know that they're making plans to do this. He was making plans with them to do this whole thing. It was just crazy. It took me 650 days to get a court hearing for the twins. So that's, 2 years. I couldn't get help from cops. I tried welfare checks. No one would help me. Cops in Texas wouldn't help me. Cops in Iowa wouldn't help me. It's just, it's a civil matter. It's a civil matter. And I leave. I'm out. I go out west. I'm like, I'm losing my mind. I'm losing my mind. I haven't seen my children. And took her all that to Sharon Wilson, Tarrant County, the worst DA there is. And she said, nothing to see here, really. He's the dad. And if he told the PTA lady to take the children, then by God, he can do it because he's the dad. And I said, well, I don't give a shit if Jesus Christ himself told her to take the kids. It's still interference with custody. It's still interference with custody, 2503. So meanwhile, I'm out there in Arizona not knowing this is going on behind my back. I have no idea. You know, like I said, I've left everything for the DA. No one's helping me. And I go out there, and I was really contemplating ending it all. I'm standing at the edge of the Grand Canyon when a guy came up and stopped me. What are you doing? Thinking about jumping. I'm saying one last prayer because I can't live like this with no children. I just can't. About 45 minutes after that man stopped me, another mother jumped from the same rock. Witnessed it, but she had a gray sweatshirt on and I did too, and a gentleman that saw this man and me talking and he knew I was about to jump said, I think she jumped. So I came out of the bathroom and he's grabbing me and I saw the repellers coming to try to save her. And then I found out she had jumped because she lost her children to her abuser. And I turned around and said, I gotta go. There was an elk standing by my car. And this gentleman said, that's a sign. God's wanting you to do something. And right then I was like, oh yeah, I am living for a reason. I've got to do something to help others. And the very next day I was crossing the Texas-New Mexico border right at the line. And I heard in my head again, and I hadn't even gone through this with my twins being gone, I hadn't even thought of this. And I heard the words again, parental alienation. And I stopped the car in the middle of the interstate. And for the first time, I didn't Google it. I looked it up on Facebook. And I was like, oh my God, there's more people like me. Oh my God. And I got out of the car and I was jumping up and down. Like, yay. I thought it was me. I thought I was going crazy. You know, all this stuff was happening to me. I thought it was me. Right then and there, I created my group. And I named it Parental Alienation Awareness Iowa. Even though I lived in Texas, that's where my children were. And now my group has become about 1,900. And I added the IPV to it. So it's Parental Alienation / IPV Awareness Iowa. IPV means intimate partner violence. And I made it my goal that I'm going to put an end to this. I'm going to shut down these courts somehow, whether it's keeping people out of there, or I am relentless with these judges, and being relentless the way I have been, writing public notices, exposing them everywhere I go. I've handed out over 20,000 public notices now. I go to the Iowa State Fair every year. This year was my 4th year in a row. I put judges' names on my vehicle. I have people behind me in their vehicles, 8 to 10 deep, with names of their children on there, names of their judges that took their children, maybe their abuser, what parental alienation is. We expose this all in the Iowa State Fair Parade. There's 50,000 spectators there from all over the world. The cops just stand there flabbergasted because the cops are at every intersection. And I tell you what, at every intersection, I stop, I stare them in the eye, and I said, we are coming for you. Do you understand this? Because you guys took an oath. You took an oath to protect us. You're not doing anything with interference with custody like in Texas, it's 2503, and people are screaming out, this happened to me. I'm in Wisconsin, Missouri, Nebraska. They're all screaming out at me. And they're clapping, they're cheering, they're standing up. It's just amazing. The response I get, it's not boos, it's yes, she's telling the truth. But those cops are just like shocked.
I got a call. We had a call earlier. You needed a welfare check down at 2009 Waco Street?
Yes.
Okay. I'm sorry for the wait. We've been doing stuff out there. But I had to call you back and let you know that the resident in 2009 Waco Street is no longer... What was it's no longer Miss Hicks.
Okay. Yes, that's so in my divorce decree, that's the address that she has on file, and she's supposed to notify me when she moves. So, I showed up today for my court-ordered visitation for my children, and she didn't show. So that's why, I have not heard from the children, have not laid eyes on the children or anything. So therefore, I was asking for a welfare check. But if you guys are not able to, check the welfare of the children, I kind of now need to, the next step for me is to have to file a missing persons report, or a interference with child custody, Texas Penal Code, section 2503.
No, sir. I'm not going to do that.
What?
What you can do is you can contact your lawyer
I've done
with the child custody issue. This is not a this is not a criminal issue.
Yeah, no, I'm not. No, I'm not saying that it's a criminal issue. It's a missing child issue now.
No, the child is with their mother.
Yes. But how do we know that?
I don't know that, but I have no reason to believe they're not with their mother. If their mother's not talking to you, this is a custody issue. It's not a criminal issue. It's not even a police issue. You're going to have to tell, you can call your lawyer and see what steps you can take past this, but I'm not going to file a missing person report, no.
Okay, so so I've spoken to my lawyer already, and if you can't lay eyes on the children after a welfare check, it's a missing persons report. The children are under 18, and this is a missing persons report.
The children are under 18, yes.
Yes, and so I'm supposed to have custody of them right now. I have not spoken with her. You cannot lay eyes on the children. That's the address that she has on file. And if you cannot lay eyes on the children, therefore it's a missing persons report. And it's Texas Penal Code, Section 2503.
I know. Interfering with child custody, I understand that. But,
Exactly.
sir, I'm not. So if the mother has not contacted you about the children, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Again, this is a child custody issue. This is not. I have no reason to believe. Who am I filing a missing person report on?
On my 3 children. They're missing right now. I went to pick them up. I went to pick them up. They were not there. I made a phone call. I made email. I've emailed. There was no reply. Okay. I don't know who they're with. They're supposed to be with me. So therefore, they're missing.
No, sir, they're not.
How do you
They're with their mother.
I'm just asking, how do you know?
Well, how do you know they're missing and not with their mother?
Because they're supposed to be with me. So if they're not with me, they're missing.
The mother. No, sir, it doesn't work that way.
Listening to the mothers talk about how they were alienated brings things in mind. There's patterns to this. I too was alienated from kids' activities. I was embarrassed in front of people. That's called parental alienation, when they place one parent against the other. I remember very well, my son was in a robotics competition. Went to San Antonio. They were with me. It was my weekend. Competition finished. I went where everybody was, sitting in the audience. I went where everybody was gathered, table in the back. And I said, okay, well, thank you. I said bye to the parents and said, I'm going to take them now. And I remember my ex standing up and she goes, no, you're not. He goes, they're with me. I'm taking them back. We're going to go get something to eat. If you guys want to go get something to eat, let's go. He goes, no, they're going to stay here because they have a party. They already have plans. So that, without me ever knowing this was going on. And I said, well, I should have known about this for me to change plans, but, let's see what it can do. And or what time, or where is it, or what's going on. They wouldn't tell me what was going on. So I said, well, number one, I'm going to take them back. Here I'm going. And she tells me right in front of everybody, you don't love your kids. Imagine that. Had a couple of fathers over there just smirking away. One of the moms was laughing. That type of embarrassment didn't happen just once. Happened many times. When you're in front of somebody, they come up and tell you don't love your kids. You have to be calm because they're waiting for you to become explosive or aggressive or turn around and say something. Well, I said, well, we're gonna take off with them. It's my weekend. Let's go. I started becoming the enemy. All of a sudden, when I turn around, there's one of San Antonio's finest walking up the steps, telling me that I'm the problem. And I told him, well, number one, it's my weekend. I have to drive them back to Laredo. He goes, no, they're going to stay with their mom, or else you and I are going to have a nice little ride. I remember him shaking his head this way. You have to understand something, people. I've been in enough fights, both in and out of the ring. I've protected people in several different countries. I was taught how to read body language. I understand when somebody's trying to instigate a fight. A lot of these officers in these videos are instigating a fight because they want to prove something. They want to earn that little scratch on that badge, that notch. Remember, it's high five time because inside the police stations, we're known as deadbeats. We're the crazy moms. So remember, stay calm, because we've all had the pains that we have to endure going through this. But let me tell you something, what keeps me going. The passion of parents that are fighting for their kids, that keeps me going. And this fight is not over yet. Each one of us has to fight it alone, but together we can change for this not to happen to others.